England versus Scotland with a Welsh referee. Paul Collier, the man in the middle, for Tom Ford versus Stephen Maguire. And both these players looking for their first win in this group after opening up with defeats earlier today. Ford, who we just saw breaking off, edged out in a decider by Mark Davis. Maguire, on the other hand, was whitewashed. It was a close first frame. He lost it on the pink against John Higgins, but then hardly got a look in after that, as Higgins coasted to his second straight 3-0 win, having already whitewashed Ding Junhui. And indeed, Higgins back in action in just a few minutes' time on the other table, looking to make it 3 wins out of 3 against Welshman Michael White, who's lost both of his matches so far. So I'll keep you up to date on that, but our focus will be here on table 2. And the first chance goes to Stephen Maguire. Well, that was a testing pink, and I think it was made even more so by the knowledge that if he missed it, which he has, he was going to be almost certainly leaving a decent chance for Ford. So the rather attacking safety, shall we say, that we saw Ford play, it worked out very much to his advantage in the end. There are certain middle-ranking players who you look at them when they're playing well and you wonder why they're not top players, because on their day they can score very heavily and relentlessly. They just don't do it often enough. Ford is certainly one of those players. And he's got a prime opportunity to score heavily here. Made his debut in the Championship League as long ago as 2012. 30. He's played in it 4 times in total, never actually made it to the winners' group. It was perhaps the fear of this sort of scenario that added the pressure to the pink that Maguire missed to middle.
63.
Still going to need another red. Having finished just the wrong side of the blue, his only option was to leave himself a longer one than he might have desired.
67.
But stroked it in easily. Should be 1-0 now, and every chance of an opening frame century. Didn't even make a 50 break in the 5 frames he played earlier against Mark Davis.
81. 82. 87. 88. 94. 95.
And with that blue, Tom Ford completes the 3rd century we've seen so far today. Highest of those,
100.
at the moment, 110 by Noppon Sankam. 127, you would say, would be more likely than not to be overtaken at some point. You wouldn't entirely discount it in terms of clinching the £500 highest break prize in the group. Stephen Maguire's miss pink to the middle was always likely to be expensive. It certainly was, but it may well have earned Tom Ford £500, because with that 127 clearance, he sets a new front runner in the race for the highest break prize in this group, and he leads Stephen Maguire by 1 frame to 0. Well, that was a very classy effort, the way he took those. It was a decent chance that he had. But they've still got to be potted, and you've not hit a ball for a couple of hours. And just coming in cold like that, still pretty impressive to clear up. England against Scotland here, as I was saying. It's Scotland against Wales on the other table. John Higgins and Michael White. And they're still in the early stages of the opening frame. But back here, we're into frame 2. That's quite a contrast to the wonderful snooker we saw from him in the first frame.
Sort of come back to there, have more angle of focus. Yeah.
Been over 15 years since these two first played each other. Maguire won on their first encounter in the UK Championship back in 2003. They've played twice before in the Championship League, one win apiece. And the more recent of those was 5 years ago now, and they've only actually played once since then. There was a 4-0 win for Ford in the Gdynia Open, a European Tour event. And even that's 3 years ago. He rounded it off with a century. And apart from a win for Ford in the inaugural snooker shootout, the one-frame high-speed event back in 2011, they've had 4 other meetings, and Maguire's won 3 of them. And this is the sort of chance Maguire's been waiting for throughout the match. Wasn't a great shot by Ford.
One.
How on earth did he manage to find that gap?
8.
So he can still keep this going, but he's going to need a good long red. Also some sort of positional heroics. Yeah, had to screw back, couldn't just drop onto the black because there was another red in the way. So Maguire still hasn't really got a foothold in this match.
One.
He was stretching to play the initial red, couldn't quite get it under control.
8.
And that was why he finished so straight on the black. Ultimately leaving himself a much more testing red than he would have hoped. So they've both passed up decent chances now. And here's another one for Maguire. It was very high quality stuff in the first frame with that excellent century from Ford. Certainly couldn't say the same about what we've seen so far in frame 2.
One. It's on Ford 1.
So both players struggling a bit here at the moment, but certainly no sign of any struggle from John Higgins. He's played really well all day, and he's already won the opening frame against Michael White on the other table. So that's 7 frames played, and he's won them all. Higgins holds the record for the fewest frames lost in a round-robin section of a Championship League group, just 2 back in 2014. And who knows, he may well beat that record. Well, Ford was quite fortunate not to have left Maguire anything easier than that.
One.
It's a much better shot than it looked. Not easy to screw back that far. You've got that much distance between cue ball and object ball, and using the rest.
Six. Seven.
We've seen a few chances for both players already in this frame, but this is the best one we've seen yet.
12. 13. $19. $20.
Ford had one of the high points of his career just a couple of months back at the UK Championship, just before Christmas, got to the semi-finals. He won 3 6-5 finishes along the way. Played Ronnie O'Sullivan in the last 4 and made an encouraging start. He won the first frame, but then lost 6 in a row. O'Sullivan didn't play his best that day, and it's disappointing for Ford that he didn't run him closer. He was certainly given the chances to.
426.
But he'll feel he should have made more of that chance.
One.
Bit of pressure on this match when you've lost your first one. Okay, if you lose 2, then you're by no means out of it, but even at that stage, you're already leaving yourself needing to win almost certainly at least 3 of your 4 remaining matches to have a chance of going through to the semi-finals. And of course, this is the last chance for both players, and indeed all the players in this group, to claim a place in the winners group, which starts here on Wednesday.
7. 8.
If Stephen Maguire makes that winners group, he'll be celebrating his birthday here in Barnsley because he's 38 on Wednesday.
15. 20. 21. 27. 28.
So right about now is when it starts to get a bit trickier. Whatever about the red near the left-hand side cushion, you've got one pretty close to the right-hand side cushion and another one right on the cushion there between the black and the brown. So it will be some effort to win the frame from here.
34. 35.
The likelihood is we'll see him build as much of a lead as he can and then try to play a good safety.
$40. 'Stephen Maguire 40.
It's one of the hardest shots in snooker. Playing a ball along a cushion with pace. You can always miss them. Well, that's extraordinary if he was attempting to pot the red to the yellow pocket and it didn't go. If that was the case, it's really bad misjudgment.
One. Blue ball. Stephen Maguire 1.
So the scrappy, fragmented nature of this frame continues.
Thanks. Foul and a miss. Stephen Maguire 4, free ball.
Well, there really wasn't much room to work with there. Only the tiniest part of the red available to him to hit.
Okay.
Doesn't seem to fancy the one cushion escape coming off the left-hand side. And you can understand why, given where the red is in relation to the brown and black.
Foul and a miss. Stephen Maguire 4, free ball.
There wouldn't have been a warning there because he is technically snookered on that red. If you fail twice to hit the ball and you're not snookered on it, you're warned that if you do it again, you'll forfeit the frame.
One.
There's still hope here for Ford because Maguire would need the last red. And with that in mind, he decided
Stephen Maguire 1.
that playing the safety was a better option than taking the extra points for the colour. And if anything, he's put Ford in an even more devilish position than the one he was a few moments ago. Is he using the jaws of the pocket here? I think that's the plan.
Foul and a miss. Stephen Maguire 4, free ball.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad play, that. I think you can make a good case that he was more likely to hit the red that way than any other route. And this time, Maguire doesn't need that last red. So this looks like 1-1.
1.
Pink would take the lead to 38 with 35 left.
Seven. Stephen Maguire 7.
Wasn't a bad effort by Ford at getting the snooker he needs, but in the end, he left a fairly straightforward hit.
Wow, Stephen
Well,
Maguire
that's 2
4.
snookers needed now, and Ford isn't going to play on for them. A fairly scrappy frame, that. Not a classic by any means, but the important thing for Maguire is that he's won it, and he's on the scoreboard now. It's 1-1. As I said, they both lost their first match. Ford just has one more to play today after this one against Nopon Sangkam from Thailand, who's making his debut in the Championship League and going really well. He's won both of his matches so far, and he played really well against Mark Davis a little earlier this afternoon. And speaking of Davis, he'll be Maguire's next opponent on this table around about 6 o'clock UK time tonight. And then whatever happens in that, Maguire will be straight back on the same table to play Michael White, who's in action at the moment and 1-0 down against John Higgins. It's So Ford won the first with a century, Maguire took a scrappy second, and it's level pegging as we start again in frame 3. Well, Ford's made a complete mess of that. Routine opener for Maguire. A pretty good chance this, you'd have to say. Hasn't really got going yet in this match. Passed up a number of chances in that previous frame before eventually winning it.
Eight. Nine. Sixteen. 17.
Well, that's finished just fine.
22. 23.
You wouldn't say it's been the most consistent season for Maguire. It's more been one of highs and lows. He's been in 3 ranking events semi-finals and the quarter-final of another.
30.
He's done well enough to have been in the Players' Championship last week. Lost his first match to Mark Allen. He should be at the Crucible without having to go through World Championship qualifying. He's currently 12th in the Race to Crucible standings. Top 16 in that will qualify automatically. Not certain yet, but very well placed at the moment.
$35. 36.
And if you were looking for
43.
one particular match as the high point of Maguire's season so far, I don't think you could do much better than
44.
the last 16 of the UK Championship. He was 4-0 down at the interval against the world champion Mark Williams. But then just played brilliantly after that, made 3 centuries in a row. To get him back into the match at 4-3 and ended up winning 6-5. He made some interesting comments after that match, effectively saying that at 4-0 down he just started throwing all his inhibitions out the window and just tried to play naturally, and played so well. And
52.
I feel if he could do that more often and not let the game bog him down, as it seems to sometimes, he could be achieving a lot more of the sort of success we were seeing from him around about a decade ago, when at one stage he was ranked as high as number 2 in the world.
57. $58. 65.
Hard to see him not winning the frame from here.
66.
Because this is all he needs to leave Ford needing 2 snookers. We may well be about to see our 2nd century of the match.
3. $74. 81. 82. 88. 89. 96. 97.
Should be the century now. So 3 frames played and 2 tons. 1 for each player. It won't be a new front runner for the highest break prize in the group. But it was a poor safety shot from Ford which let Maguire in, and he took full advantage with that break of 102. And having trailed 1-0, he now leads Tom Ford by 2 frames to 1. That 1-2-7 earlier by Ford didn't last long as the highest break in the group. Around the same time, in fact, John Higgins was making a 130 on the other table. And Higgins now leads Michael White by 2 frames to 0. If he can win the next frame, he'll finish the day with 3 wins out of 3 and 9 frames won out of 9. I mentioned earlier, Higgins once went through the round-robin stage of a group only losing 2 frames. It's the all-time record. And he could be threatening his own record if he keeps going like this. Not even as if he's struggling over the line in these frames. He's winning most of them with big breaks. So a good day for the defending champion. And it could be about to become a slightly better day than it's been so far for Stephen Maguire. He lost his first match. He needs one more frame to get his first win on the board, because he leads Tom Ford by 2 frames to 1.
One.
So a match that started so promisingly for Tom Ford finds him on the ropes a bit. He's got to win the last 2 frames. Oh, that's going to be 2 defeats out of 2.
4.
And you look at it, his next 2 matches are against Noppon Sankam later tonight and then John Higgins first thing in the morning. And given the form they're both in, he'll have his work cut out to get much out of those. Well, didn't hit that positionally at all as he intended. But he's been fortunate to have a chance.
9.
Albeit one which comes with very awkward cueing indeed.
10. Tom Ford 10.
And suddenly he's the one who's struggling to make the most of his chances.
One. Eight. Nine. $16. 17.
The format of this Championship League over the years has given rise to some epic campaigns. You can end up playing in so many groups, and Maguire back in 2013 came in Group 2, got to the semi-finals, got to the semis again in Group 3, lost at that stage both times, then lost 4 group finals in a row. He was finally eliminated by losing the Group 7 final to Marco Fu, by which stage he'd played 46 matches and still didn't make the winners' group.
Maguire 25.
Just as he looked to be getting into a bit of flow, a bit of rhythm, a somewhat unexpected miss on the black.
One. Six.
And an equally unexpected chance for Ford to maybe take us to a decider. It would be the third one we've seen in just 7 matches today.
Excuse me. It's on 4-12.
Just seems to have lost his way, maybe lost his focus a bit, Ford. I was saying earlier how on his day he can play so well that you wonder sometimes how he hasn't done more in the game. And I think that may be part of the explanation that sometimes when things aren't going entirely his way, he can get a bit down on himself, get a bit down on the game, really.
Foul. It's on 4-4.
Well, you don't see this very often. Very, very occasionally over the years we've seen a ball run onto a cushion like that and then drop into a pocket.
One.
Remember Alan McManus doing it at the Crucible some years ago.
Eight. 9. $14. Tom forward 14.
An unconvincing attempt at the red to the baulk pocket. Sees forward break down. That's Maguire back in. Ford was 2-1 down in his first match against Mark Davis. But he managed to level on that occasion, winning the fourth frame on the black.
One.
But could Maguire deprive him of the opportunity to do the same? Not straightforward by any means. The last red, after he pots this one, very awkwardly placed, and the yellow's on the cushion.
No.
Well, that'll help. Red over the pocket now. This should be well within his range of capabilities, this pink. And with that, Maguire comes to the last red, all square in this frame.
15.
Well, he's been a bit unlucky there. Just flicked the yellow out, but just lost the cue ball a little. Is he going for the snooker in behind the black? This looks good.
Stephen Maguire 16.
Well done to Michael White on the other table. He's taken the third frame against John Higgins. That's the first frame Higgins has lost today. He now leads 2-1. Had a bit of good fortune not to leave any chance at the yellow there, and he's acknowledged as much. It looks like Maguire's had a bit of good running there. Unless the yellow goes past the pink. No, well, we could see very clearly from that angle, no chance. And you wouldn't quite say it's a simple question of whoever pots the yellow wins the frame, but certainly if you do pot the yellow and get on the green here, should be a big favourite from there, whoever does it. said it wouldn't be a straightforward case of whoever pots the yellow will probably win the frame, and even less so now. Maguire pushing the brown a bit safer. Although no sooner has that happened than Ford has developed it just a little. Nicely struck now. Is he on the green? He is. Oh, that's just a terrible shot, though. He had finished just the wrong side of the green for getting onto the brown. And that was why he had to play the screw back, making the shot more difficult and ultimately causing him to miss it. And that's nicely done by Maguire, and the writing looks to be well and truly on the wall here. And what a letdown for Ford. Started so well. Cleared up with 127 in the opening frame.
7.
It's all gone wrong for him since. Maguire's been clearly the better player. He had a century of his own in the previous frame.
12.
And with this simple pink, Stephen Maguire completes the turnaround. He was 1-0 down, but he's gone on to beat Tom Ford by 3 frames to 1. And he has his first win in Group 7 of the Championship League. For Ford, though, it's played 2, lost 2.